The ultimatum in the arena. The alien sky was stained violet with storm clouds as the ceremonial arena came to life with buzzing drones and flickering banners of the Empire. The stands overflowed with beings of every species under Dominion rules. Commanders, nobles, and loyalists alike, all had gathered to witness a simple execution. At the center of the arena stood a man-human, battered but upright. He was shirtless, scars running like forgotten rivers across his skin. Dust clung to his boots, blood marked his side, yet his eyes held no fear. A guard thundered through the speakers, "Kneel, human before the Empire and its beast." The crowd erupted in cruel laughter, clapping claws and appendages in anticipation. They thought this was already over. Thought this man, a relic of a forgotten war, was powerless. A monstrous creature stood behind a reinforced gate, bound in shimmering chains of plasma, 12 feet tall, plated in obsidian armor with red bioluminescence pulsing beneath its skin. The beast snarled with something more than rage. Confusion. It was not wild, it was trained, conditioned, but something in its eyes flickered differently. When it saw the man, the human didn't kneel. He raised his voice, instead calm, clear, defiant. "This isn't submission. This is a reckoning. You didn't just chain a monster. You trained your executioner." Whispers broke across the crowd. An alien general narrowed his eyes. Even the announcer faltered. The beast's breathing slowed. Its muscles twitched. Something had been awakened. Two guards aimed charged rifles at the human. Final warning, Terra, kneel or be annihilated. He didn't move. His hand rose slowly and touched his chest where a silver disc blinked faintly beneath the collarbone. One press, a signal unseen. The beast's eyes widened. The chain buzzed and snapped. The arena exploded into screams. The creature lunged, not at the man but at the towers above the stands, ripping apart steel like thread. Guards scattered. Plasma shots flew. One hit the beast square in the shoulder. It didn't flinch. The human stood as the audience panicked. Shouts of traitor and invasion echoed through the chaos. From the far side, a figure emerged from the shadowed corridor, a tall female alien with blue-hued skin and luminous silver eyes. She wore ceremonial battle armor, a sword at her back. Her name was Commander Soraya Voss, the war-born daughter of the Vothan blood court. She stepped onto the arena sands with practiced grace. "You planned this?" she called out to the human, disbelief thick in her voice. "No," he replied. "I survived this." Soraya's hand hovered near her blade. "The beast was meant to devour you as penance for your people's crimes. And yet, it shields you." The beast stepped closer to the human now, looming protectively. Its breathing calmed in rhythm with his cell around them. The panic grew but here in the eye of the storm. Silence bloomed. "I was told you were extinct," Soraya said, voice lower. "Now then, you were lied to," he answered. "Like everything else, your empire fed you. You dare insult the Dominion," she barked, trying to reclaim her command. He stepped forward, unshaken. "Your empire fears what it cannot control. So they turned us into shadows, erased us from history, but you can't erase memory from the mind of a beast." Soraya's face cracked with hesitation. She glanced at the audience, the cameras, the elites leaning forward in disbelief. Everything was being recorded. "You trained your own destruction," the human said softly, eyes fixed on her. "And now it remembers." The beast suddenly bowed, its enormous armored frame lowering before the human, its eyes closing like an oath had been sworn. The entire arena gasped. "What is your name?" Syria asked, not out of formality, but out of something else, uncertainty. He looked up at her. "I am Kale of Earth, and I did not come to kneel." Suddenly, sirens blared, emergency gates closed. A voice shrieked through the PA system, "Lock the arena, kill them both, kill the traitor commander, seal the rebellion." Soraya turned slowly toward the source of the voice. Her own commander, her own blood. "I stood beside monsters all my life," she whispered. "Maybe it's time I stood beside someone who remembers what it means to be free." Kale extended a hand, not with dominance, but with choice. The arena rumbled again. The beast growled. And Soraya made her decision. She took his hand, and the Empire would never forget that moment. Chains are meant to break. Soraya's fingers closed around Kale's hand, the texture of his skin coarse from battles fought long before today. She didn't fully understand why she was doing it, only that something inside her cracked the moment. He stood defiant in front of the beast. The creature, which had once made generals tremble, now obeyed him like an old friend remembered after a long silence. Above them, the crowd roared, not with cheers, but confusion, panic. The noble seats had gone dark, their occupants disappearing. Behind armored curtains, dozens of drones zipped across the sky, scanning for threats. The broadcast hadn't cut it, had multiplied. Every channel across the Empire was still airing the event. Billions watched. Commander Voss, boomed a voice from high above, laced with venom. You are ordered to step away from the human and execute him. Now, Soraya turned to the nearest broadcast drone, her voice ice-cold and clear. No. Reaction was immediate. Turrets activated along the upper perimeter. Soldiers poured into the arena's edge, clad in black Dominion armor, visors glowing red. The human turned to Soraya calmly. They won't give you a second warning, she nodded. Then we won't give them a second chance, the beast growled. Again, Kale placed a hand on its neck and whispered something the cameras couldn't catch. The monster stilled. Then it turned toward the charging soldiers. Its roar was a tidal wave of fury. Kale and Soraya moved quickly, not in retreat but to the northern corridor toward the exit that hadn't been sealed yet. The beast tore through Dominion lines like they were made of cloth. Energy blasts ricocheted off its armored skin, doing little but fueling its rage. Bones cracked. Screams echoed. Soraya led the way, slicing through a surprised guard who raised his weapon to slow. Her blade glowed with heat, its energy crystal core humming with purpose. Kale wasn't as fast, injured from a sniper round still embedded in his side, but his movements were precise. Each step was with intent. He wasn't just surviving, he was navigating like a man who'd been here before. Where are we going? Soraya shouted over the chaos. There's a service shaft beneath the old arena cells. Kale replied, gripping his ribs. It leads outside the city wall. It's narrow, but it bypasses the security grid. You memorized the arena blueprints. I fought in its construction 30 years ago. Soraya nearly stumbled. It's impossible. You'd be humans age differently than your kind. Your people assumed we were gone. You buried us alive instead. They reached the old access grate, hidden behind a pile of cracked stone and debris. Kale slammed his palm onto a hidden panel. It buzzed faintly, then hissed open. Ancient dust swirled as the door groaned. Soraya turned once more to the beast. It still fought, buying them time. Kale placed the same silver chip from earlier into the wall socket. Lights flickered inside the tunnel. He'll follow, Kale said. When the time's right. How do you control him? She asked. I don't. I remembered him. That was enough. They slipped into the dark tunnel, stepping over corroded cables and rusted pipes. It stank of mold and oil. The sounds of battle grew fainter with each step, but in Soraya's mind, they rang louder. Her thoughts twisted. Her training screamed at her trainer, deserter, oathbreaker, but her gut had never been this steady. Why didn't you attack me when I drew my sword? She asked him, voice low. Kale glanced at her. Because I saw something in your eyes. You were questioning the script you'd memorized your whole life. It's a rare thing to see someone starting to think. She frowned, then smirked. That's the most backhanded compliment I've ever received. It was meant to be honest, not kind. Up ahead, the tunnel began to curve upward. A faint breeze kissed their faces. They were close. Suddenly, a sound echoed behind them, heavy, metallic, rhythmic. Kale turned just as a massive Dominion war android dropped into the tunnel, blocking their path back. 7 feet tall, plated in reactive armor, its glowing blade arm hissed with anticipation. Run, Kale whispered, pushing Soraya forward. No. She stepped in front of him, activating her sword. I've fought machines all my life. This one bleeds circuits like the rest. The android lunged forward, and the tunnel became a blur of sparks and steel. Soraya dodged the first strike, ducked low and countered. Her blade cut through its shoulder plating, revealing wires and sparks. But it recovered instantly and threw her across the wall with its mechanical arm. She groaned, dazed. Kale moved faster than she expected. Despite his injury, he leaped onto the machine's back, driving a blade, his only weapon, between its shoulder joints. It howled in electronic agony, trying to shake him off. Soraya recovered just in time to swing her sword low, severing its leg joint. The machine collapsed with a scream of grinding metal. Soraya and Kale breathed heavily in the Doc, you fight well, she said. You fall well, he replied. A sudden deep growl echoed from behind them. The tunnel ceiling cracked and the beast dropped through, coated in ash and blood. Its breathing was heavy, but it was alive. It looked to Kale and then to Soraya. Then it bowed again. Soraya couldn't believe it. You were in that beast's memories. Kale nodded slowly. They tried to reprogram everything about it, but they left just one key, ... emotion, loyalty. They climbed the final ladder and emerged beneath the broken outer gate of the city wall. Smoke stained the skies. Dominion warships patrolled above. Alarms rang across districts. But they had made it out. And now they were fugitives. What happens now? Soraya asked. Kale looked to the horizon. Now we wake up the rest. The blood price of truth smoke curled up from the burning outer districts as sirens howled like lost souls above the metallic skyline. Kale, Soraya, and the beast crouched beneath the twisted remains of a collapsed watchtower. It was barely dawn, but the city had not slept. The events of the arena had spread like lightning through soldiers comes through the public broadcast networks, through terrified whispers of nobles whose comfort now trembled under a crack. Every patrol, every drone, every satellite was now looking for one man. You've triggered a planetary lockdown, Soraya whispered as she leaned beside him, checking the charge in her sword core. Do you realize what that means? Kale sat still, a smear of blood drying along his temple. Yes, it means they're afraid. Behind them, the beast curled into a low crouch like a feline carved from obsidian, watching the skies. Its massive chest rose and fell in slow rhythm, as if listening for something beyond sound. A screech of thrusters echoed in the distance. Patrols were getting closer. Kale gestured toward an alley, slipping into its shadowed path. Soraya followed, her armor clinking faintly. Where are we going now? She asked. To find someone, Kale answered. If he's still alive. Who? Kale hesitated before responding. The engineer who built the first memory cages, the ones they used to tame the beasts. He's the only one who might know how to undo what's left. Soraya looked at him, sharp. You plan to free all the creatures they turned into weapons? Kale paused. No, I plan to let them choose. They ducked into a ruined underlevel long abandoned by the elite and overrun by forgotten refugees and maintenance bots. Flickering neon signs still blinked over shattered stalls. A hologram of the Emperor played on loop, flickering between static bursts. Loyalty is peace. Obedience is strength. Truth is treason. Kale spat at the projection. The beast let out a low rumble of agreement. You know, Soraya said as they moved, in the academy. They taught us your kind couldn't be reasoned with, that humans were chaos incarnate. Kale didn't look at her. That's what we were to them, because we couldn't be owned. You've already changed me, she muttered. And I don't like it. He offered a rare smile. You'll get used to it. Suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed through the corridor. Kale froze. He motioned for silence. From above, a cloaked figure appeared, melting out of the shadows. Half of his face was metal, the other lined with scars and burn marks. He held a sonic blade, but didn't raise it. Kale, the figure said. You mad bastard. I thought you were dead. Kale stepped forward. I was. Then they tried to finish the job. The man's eyes scanned Soraya and the beast. You brought company. She saved my life, Kale said. And the beast, well, he saved us both. The man's name was Marek Drown, once a military engineer, now a hunted outcast. He led them into an old maintenance chamber, walls covered in schematics and ancient Dominion tech. Sparks flew from open consoles. A rotating holographic map of the capital blinked overhead. You're not here for a reunion, Marek said, pouring synthetic water into rusted cups. So what's your play? Kale held up the chip. They're still using this signal across the system, but it only overrides control. I need full release. Marek sighed. You're talking about a base-level cascader reset of every memory creature on the planet. That'll trigger panic, riots, war. Kale's voice was firm. Then let them feel what they've done. Marek turned to Soraya. And you're still Dominion-blooded. Why help him? She looked at the beast, then at Kale. Because I've been loyal to a lie long enough. Marek smirked. Well, if you're going to shatter an empire, might as well do it with style. He turned back to the panel and began typing furiously. I can rewrite the signal, embed a command that severs all chains, but I'll need 30 minutes and access to the original relay tower. Kale's eyes narrowed. The spire. Marek nodded grimly. Top of the citadel, heart of the network, the most secure building in the empire. Kale stood. Then that's where we're going. Syrah stood beside him. That's suicide. He met her eyes. So is silence. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the floor beneath them. Dust fell from the ceiling. The beast stood, alert. Drones screeched past the broken windows above. Dominion troops had tracked them. Go, Marek shouted. I'll send the code through a portable transmitter by me time. They rushed out the back tunnel. Marek sealed the doors behind them. As they moved through the lower passages of the city, Kale began to slow. His wound was worsening. Blood had seeped through the makeshift bandage, and his balance faltered. Soraya caught him just before he stumbled. You're not going to make it to the spire like this, she said. I have to. Then you'll do it leaning on me, she said, throwing his arm over her shoulder. They moved on, the beast guarding their rear, occasionally glancing back with low growls above them. In the throne chamber of the citadel, the Emperor's proxen owned only as the voice watched it all through holofeeds. His mirror-like helmet reflected the chaos of his empire. He turned to a nearby general. Dispatch the execution guard. Full city sweep. I want the humans, corpse and the traitor's head. The general saluted and vanished. And far below, beneath the broken bones of a crumbling world, a human, an alien, and a beast prepared to burn the Empire's lies down to ash. The climb through ash and blood nightfall came like a curtain of steel over the broken city. Dominion warships prowled the skies, and the citadel spire, once a symbol of order and power, now loomed like a giant fang in the middle of chaos. It pierced the clouds black, silent, and pulsing with power. Its upper levels were wrapped in energy shields, but the base still connected to the old maintenance arteries, forgotten tunnels that only a few still knew. Kale, limping, leaned heavily on Soraya as they approached the outskirts of the industrial underbelly. The beast moved ahead in silence, its muscles coiled and ready. The streets were littered with barricades, Dominion posters, half-burnt, and patrols standing idle, confused by fractured command signals. Marek's signal worked, Kale said, barely above a whisper. He's disrupting their AI hierarchy. The network's fragmenting. Soraya glanced up at a drone that hovered in place, lights blinking erratically. For now, but the spire runs on independent grid systems. Their control hub won't fall, so they reached a steel hatch embedded into a wall scarred with age and war. Kale pressed the chip against a concealed reader and old access port, forgotten by most. A door hissed open. Inside, a winding service tunnel stretched upward. It was narrow, barely wide enough for one person. The climb would be vertical for nearly a kilometer. This was how the engineers escaped when the tower was under siege, Kale explained. Long before your empire ruled this place. Soraya nodded. Then let's make history repeat. Kale let go of her shoulder and looked at the beast. You won't fit in the shaft. The creature lowered its massive head in understanding, emitting a soft, rumbling growl. Kale stepped forward and pressed his forehead to the beast's snout. You've done more than I could have asked. The beast gave a low whine. Soraya watched in silence. It was not just a war machine. It was alive in ways her empire never wanted her to believe. Then, as if sensing something beyond their view, the beast turned and leaped into the shadows, heading toward the city square. Where distant gunfire had begun to echo, Kale grabbed a rung and began the climb. Soraya followed, and the tunnel swallowed them. Minutes turned to hours as they scaled. Their breaths were heavy, the silence broken only by the sound of boots against iron and Kale's occasional grimace from his wound. Soraya kept her thoughts focused. She couldn't afford to feel guilt, fear, or doubt now. They were climbing, not just toward the tower, but toward a truth buried in darkness. Halfway up, Kale stopped. Rest 10 seconds. Soraya clung to the ladder beside him. Your pulse is irregular. Still beating, he muttered. Good enough. What if this fails? She asked. What if we broadcast the message, release the creatures and they turn on us instead? Kale turned his head slightly. Then at least they'll be free to choose. At the top of the shaft, they reached an access panel. Kale wired the chip into a manual port, and the hatch groaned open. Cool, recycled air rushed past them. They entered a dark maintenance hallway glowing faintly with blue lumen panels. Beyond the corridor was the spire's central relay chamber. Its walls curved upward like the inside of a glass heart, filled with pulsing cables and data conduits. A single console floated mid-air, suspended by electromagnetic rings. Giant transmitter arrays spun slowly along the dome above, absorbing and redirecting all signals across the planetary grid. Soraya stepped forward, eyes wide. This is the mind of the Empire. Kale walked to the console and plugged in Marek's device. A hologram burst open, a blueprint of the Dominion's beast control system, laid bare in light and code. Help me stabilize the interface, he said, typing. Quickly, Marek embedded a cascade trigger into the release signal, but the AI is fighting it. Soraya moved beside him, her fingers dancing across the console. I see it looped redundancy chains. They created failsafes for every override, but they didn't expect someone to upload a counter-signal from inside the spire itself. Kale replied. We're not hacking it, we're becoming it. Suddenly, klaxons erupted around them. Red light bathed the walls. The dome began to close. They found us, Soraya said, drawing her blade. Kale didn't look up. I need 60 seconds. Then I'll buy you 70. The blast doors blew open, and soldiers in obsidian armor stormed in execution guard. Hand-picked by the voice, silent, precise, relentless, Soraya leaped into motion, her blade carving arcs of violet energy. She danced between the soldiers like lightning wrapped in flesh, moving faster than Kale had ever seen. But there were too many. One broke through, charging Kale with a shock baton. Before it could strike, the beast crashed through the side wall of the spire, throwing stone and steel like pebbles. With a thunderous roar, it landed between Kale and the attacker, ripping the soldier in two. Soraya shouted in surprise. It climbed the outside of the tower. The beast bled, dozens of wounds along its side, but its eyes blazed with purpose. More soldiers came. Soraya fought three at once, blood streaming down her arm. Kale's fingers flew over the console. Almost there, almost a plasma blast struck him in the side. He screamed, falling to one knee. Soraya turned, her sword cleaving through another soldier, and sprinted to him. Kale. He looked up, bloodied, trembling but smiling. I pressed it. The tower trembled. Across the city, signals burst like stars all at once. Beasts chained in labs, war zones, and arenas began to stir. Collars blinked red then off. In the upper levels of the Dominion Palace, commanders screamed as their monitors went black. In military bases, alarms rang as creatures refused orders, breaking free of bonds they hadn't even known were there. The streets, the people stopped running. The signal echoed across the sky like a heartbeat, and in every corner of the planet, chains broke. Kale collapsed. Soraya caught him. The beast stood over them, bloodied, roaring not in fury, but in triumph. And in the high-throne chamber, the voice stared at the feed, his reflection flickering across the screen as the Empire began to fracture. The voice of rebellion outside the shattered walls of the Citadel spire. The skies had turned from still to chaotic. Dominion warships spun in tight orbit, trying to trace the source of the interference now sweeping across their systems. Command centers across the planet flickered to black. Beasts once feared, once used like hammers of war, were now no longer responding. Some ran, some stood still. Some howled toward the sky in grief, and others simply turned toward the nearest Dominion officer and acted as though they'd just awakened from a long, violent nightmare. Inside the spire, Kale's body lay against the main transmitter base, blood soaked through his shirt, his eyes fluttering. Soraya held him, armor stained with burns and ash. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from something stranger, something newer. She'd never held someone who had bled for something greater than vengeance. You can't die, she whispered. Not now. Not after all this. Kale coughed. WASN single quotes. The plan. The beast stepped closer and lay beside them, its breathing labored. Its sides heaved with effort, and yet it made no sound of pen-only presence, like it refused to fall until Kale could stand again. Soraya pressed a signal to her ear. Merrick, come in. Spire is compromised, but the message went through. Static. Then Merrick's voice cracked through. I saw it. Every tower in the system lit up. It's done, Soraya. They can't stop it now, but you've got to move. The voice knows, and he's coming. She stood, gripping her sword. How long? She asked. Minutes. Maybe less. Kale tried to sit up. Then we hold ... until we can't. No, Soraya said firmly. We don't wait to die. We make them bleed to catch us. She pressed a few final commands into the console and yanked the chip out. Sparks flew. The main grid overloaded. That was the last connection this spire had to their central core. She said, we just amputated the head. As if summoned by her words, the room dimmed and shifted. The air grew heavy. The lights turned cold. From the far chamber beyond the collapsed wall, boots echoed like war drums. Then, they saw him. The voice entered not as a man, not even as a soldier, but something more spectral. Wrapped in living metal robes, drones swirling around his frame. He was a walking network. His helmet shone like a mirror, but it reflected no light, only shadows. You broadcast treason, he said, voice calm and razor sharp, and now you expect the galaxy to change. Kale tried to rise, supported by the beast. We didn't expect it, we chose it. The voice stepped closer. You believe because you've broken the leash, you've broken the master. Foolish. The Empire does not rule by tech, it rules by fear. Soraya raised her blade. Then, why are you here alone? Voice. If your fear still held, you wouldn't need to come down yourself. The voice paused. For the first time, something human broke through the machine. You were the Empire's finest blade, Soraya Voss, he said softly, and now you kneel beside a relic and a monster. I kneel for no one, she said. Not anymore. The voice extended his hand and the air thickened. His drones darted forward, blades ignited. Kale pushed off the beast and stood, breath short but eyes alive. "No more chains," he whispered, and activated the chip again. This time, it wasn't a signal, it was a beacon. From orbit, forgotten satellites sold human tech buried during the first extermination awakened. They weren't weapons, they were memories. Each one contained visual records, sounds, stories, broadcast footage of Earth's fall, of the Dominion's silent cleansing, of betrayals, sacrifices, and warnings. They erupted across every public screen, station, and ship across the planet. Children who'd only known the Dominion's version of history now stared at images of cities burning, of human families reaching for each other in their last moments, of soldiers fighting with courage against impossible odds. Seria's voice rang through the spire. "You built your throne on lies, but truth doesn't need weapons, it just needs to be seen." The voices' drones faltered. They hovered mid-air, uncertain. "Finish it," the voice screamed, but the beast moved first. It lunged not with rage, but with precision, slamming into the voice, knocking drones aside. Saraya joined, her blade cleaving through the mirrored armor. The voice reeled back, sparks flying from his chest, and laughed. "You think you're heroes? You think history will remember you?" Kale stepped forward. "No, I think they'll remember this moment." When silence ended, he pressed one final command on the chip hand. The voice of Earth echoed across the stars. A single phrase. "Once lost, now reborn, we are human, and we do not kneel." All across the Empire's controlled worlds, something shifted. In labor camps, captives dropped their tools. In war zones, weapons were lowered. In underground chambers, small resistance cells erupted in cheers. And on distant planets, once lost human outposts reactivated their long-dormant beacons. The voice screamed, rage overwhelming logic. He raised his hand to strike, but Saraya was faster. She drove her blade straight through his core. The helmet cracked, the drones dropped, and the voice was silent. Kale collapsed again, the energy finally draining from him. Saraya caught him before he hit the ground, cradling him against her. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he murmured. "We did." The beast lay beside them, breathing heavy, bloodied but proud. The spire trembled. Far below, the city roared not in fear, but in rising defiance. And in the quiet just before sunrise, hope walked again. The empire that trembled the dawn that followed was unlike any before. Not because the skies were clear, they weren't. Smoke still billowed from broken towers. Fires still burned in the outer districts, and Dominion warships still circled above, like carrion birds. But something fundamental had shifted in the heart of the city. And across every world under Dominion rule, the voice was dead, and his death hadn't come by a bullet, or a bomb, or some secret rebellion long planned in the shadows. No, it had come from something more dangerous, an idea finally spoken out loud. Kale lay still, wrapped in a tattered cloak, his body broken but breathing. Saraya stood watch near him, sword at her side, blood dried on her armor, and her expression distant. She wasn't just guarding him, she was watching history reboot itself in real time. She had seen the raw feed from the satellites after Kale triggered the memory beacons, images that no citizen of the Dominion was ever meant to see. Children laughing in green earth fields, old humans reading poetry in ruined cities, a woman dying with her hand pressed against a burnt-out photo of her family. Not soldiers, not monsters, people. The beast lay nearby, its wounds dressed crudely. It had not left Kale's side since the spire fell. Outside, a crowd had begun to gather. It started with a few, the curious, the lost, the daring. Then they multiplied. Hundreds stood before the ruined tower, and not a single one of them ran. No soldiers, no overlords, no execution squads, just civilians. Saraya sit forward. "You're not here to see a hero," she called out, her voice echoing across the plaza. "He didn't come to rule you. He didn't come to conquer your cities or punish your leaders." She pointed behind her toward Kale. "That man walked into our most guarded fortress not to destroy us, but to remind us of what was stolen, not just from humans, but from all of us." No one spoke, but no one moved away either. Then an older alien woman, robes torn and eyes rimmed with grief, walked slowly forward. She placed a worn medallion at Seria's feet. It bore the insignia of the Dominion's warrior caste. "I served for 40 years, the woman said, "but I won't serve lies anymore." Others followed. A young merchant dropped his identification sigil. A technician placed her command token on the cracked stone. Even a child stepped forward, offering a single torn page, an image of Kale. Broadcast earlier, standing beside the beast. Symbols of control, castaway, a revolution without banners, only choices. Soraya turned as Kale stirred behind her. He winced, but sat up slowly. His eyes found hers. You're still here. I told you, she said, kneeling beside him. I'm walking with you now. He smiled faintly, then coughed. Then let's take the next step. But before they could stand, a message broke through their portable comms. Merrick's voice, tight with urgency. They're coming. Not just soldiers, high command ships from orbit, dropships, weapons we've never seen deployed planetside. They're going to glass the entire capital. Suraja's breath caught. They'd burn their own city. They'll bury the truth in ash. Marek replied, unless we stop them first. Kale pulled himself up, groaning. How long do we have? An hour, maybe less. Soraya looked at the crowd. We can't run. Not anymore. Kale nodded. Then we need to speak again louder. Marek interrupted. Kale, you remember Project Keystone? Kale froze. It was a myth. No, Marek said. It was buried. Deep under the central relay station, a failsafe created by early rebel engineers, a Lastra-sort countersignal, strong enough to disable any Dominion satellite, mothership, or long-range weapon, but only if activated from within the capital's old core vault. Kale gritted his teeth. That place collapsed decades ago. No, Marek said. The tunnel still exists. And you have the only chip that can unlock it. Soraya turned to Kale. Then let's go. No, Kale said. I can't. If I leave this city right now, the people will break. They need to see I'm still here. Soraya's brow furrowed. But we need you for the activation. Kale placed the chip in her hand. Yorga, her eyes widened. Me. You were their sword, he said softly. Now be their voice. She looked down at the chip, small, unassuming, but humming with dormant power. Her hands closed around it. I won't fail you, she whispered. You won't, he said, because you're not doing it for me. The beast stepped forward then, nudging Kale gently with its head. No, Kale said to it. You go with her. Protect her like you did me. The creature hesitated, then slowly turned toward Soraya and knelt. She blinked. Did he just? Kale smirked weakly. He's always had better instincts than most people. Soraya climbed onto the beast's back, holding the chip close. When I light the sky with the signal, make sure there's still a sky left to see. Kale gave a single nod. The beast leaped from the plaza, bounding into the rubble-strewn alleyways like thunder wrapped in flesh. And Kalo, broken, bleeding but unbowed, stood slowly before the crowd. He looked out at the faces watching him. Not soldiers, not rebels, just people. And he whispered, loud enough for every recorder still running. We have lived under silence too long. If you can still speak, then speak. If you can still stand, then stand. If you can still fight not with blades, but with your truth, then now is the time. Behind him, the spire cracked again, and a shaft of light broke through the clouds, and far in the distance, atop a beast running toward a buried vault, a former commander held the last hope of a free world in her hands. The countdown had begun. The day the sky remembered. The ancient tunnels beneath the capital were older than any living creature above them. They predated the Dominion. They predated even the last human war. Carved into the bones of the planet, they were meant to be by the Empire beneath layers of new history, new cities, new lies. But history has a way of breathing again when called. Soraya Voss raced through the winding darkness on the back of the beast. The stolen signal chip clutched to her chest. Every motion of the creature was thunder, yet precise. Its body burned with cuts, scars, and seeping wounds, but it never faltered. It ran not for conquest, not for instinct. It ran for choice, for truth. Above them, the capital had become a battlefield of voices. Kale stood on the steps of the broken spire, his body barely upright, supported by a salvaged metal crutch and pure will. The square around him was packed now. Thousands. They came not just from the city, but from surrounding territories. Workers, scholars, escaped test subjects, ex-soldiers who had thrown down their insignia. Even children stood on rooftops holding old speakers, rebroadcasting Kale's voice in every direction. They chanted no name, no war cry, only one sentence, rising in volume with every breath: we do not kneel. The Dominion knew this wasn't just rebellion, it was collapse. High Command had authorized protocol, Sundowner planetary purge from orbit. It had only been used once before in galactic history, a final act of imperial cruelty. High above the planet, in the shadow of a dying star, a massive command ship turned slowly toward the surface. A weapon on its belly began to glow. The purge had begun. In the tunnels, Soraya finally reached the vault gate. It stood like a forgotten monument, an ancient steel ring buried in the stone, covered in vines and dust. But the interface panel was intact. The human design hadn't aged like Dominion tech. It didn't blink or sing. It simply waited, slid the chip into place. A low hum rumbled beneath her feet. The ring split open like a metal iris, revealing the core chamber circular room with a single platform in the center, pulsing with silent energy. Soraya dismounted and approached the console. Text appeared, not Dominion glyphs, but Old Earth English. Last signal key detected. Final broadcast ready, authorize reset. She hesitated. Not from fear, but from gravity. The Empire would feel this signal like a blade to its heart. Systems would crash. Beasts would never again hear the false voice of command. Long-range Dominion weapons would fall silent, not because of war but because the machines themselves would remember who built them. Let them remember, Soraya whispered. She pressed the command dot above. The sky changed. The weapon aboard the Dominion's command ship surged, then fizzled. Power relays failed. Guidance systems rewrote themselves, and for the first time in generations, the stars blinked with freedom instead of surveillance. In the capital, Kale looked up. The city fell silent. Then, high above, dozens of orbital drones, weapons of control, began to rain down, not destruction, but light. They projected images, memory scenes from lost colonies, from human survivors, from alien families torn apart and healed again. The people saw everything, the lies, the stolen past, the choices made in secret holes, and they wept, and then they cheered. Soraya stumbled from the vault's mouth, the beast limping behind her. The signal had exhausted the core's energy. It was gone now, one time only, but that was enough. She looked at the sky and saw something she had never seen before. Hope, raw and unfiltered, back in the capital square. Kale collapsed, but this time, it was into waiting arms. The people didn't let him fall. Marek arrived moments later, breathless, dragging a salvaged transmitter with him. It's done, he said. The Dominion's entire override grid just vanished. Kale smiled through bloodied lips. Then it's just us now, us, Marek asked. People, Kale said. Just people. Soraya returned 2 hours later. The crowd parted for her like water for a blade. But this time, they didn't bow, they stood. The beast walked beside her, no collar, no chain. It passed children who reached out to touch it. It didn't snarl, it didn't growl. It let them. Soraya stepped onto the broken stage. Kale reached for her hand and she helped him rise. Together they faced the people. No thrones, Kale said. No crowns, Soraya nodded. Only truth, and the right to walk forward together in the far reaches of the galaxy. Other Dominions trembled. Slave worlds sent new messages. We heard them. We are rising. On black market broadcasts, the footage played in endless loops. Even old enemies of Earth paused, uncertain if this was a trick or if humanity had truly returned. But those who saw the final image, recorded by the last drone before the Dominion feed shut down, believed it was a man with a wounded body, a woman with blood-stained hands, and a beast once built for war. All three standing side by side, not as weapons, or rulers, or slaves, but as a beginning, and carved into the stone beneath them. Someone had written with chalk, "A whisper becomes a roar when you stop fearing silence." The Empire didn't fall in fire, it fell in truth. And that day the galaxy remembered what it meant to be human.